Welcome to the Passive Mobile Home Park Investing Podcast with your host, Andrew Keel. This is the podcast where you can get the education you need to invest 100% passively in the highly profitable niche of mobile home parks.
Welcome to the Passive Mobile Home Park Investing Podcast. This is your host, Andrew Keel, and today we have an amazing guest in Mr. Tim Woodbridge. Before we dive in, I want to ask you a real quick favor. Would you mind please taking an extra 30 seconds to head over to iTunes and rate this podcast with 5 stars? This helps us get more listeners, and it means the absolute world to me. So thanks for making my day with that review of the show. All right, let's dive in. Tim Woodbridge purchased his first mobile home park in December of 2019. And since then, he has grown a portfolio of 9 mobile home parks, totaling just under 300 lots. He specializes in value-add multifamily assets, most of which were distressed and in need of total makeover. Tim is a former registered nurse for over 8 years, graduated from Northern Arizona University in 2012, and was able to just within 2 years quit nursing and join the MHP asset class full-time. Tim, we are excited to welcome you to the show.
Andrew, thank you so much for having me on, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, would you mind starting out by telling our listeners a little about your story and how in the world you got into manufactured housing?
Sure. I was a nurse for a while. I went into nursing because nursing is safe. And, so I grew up, I didn't know anything about money. My dad worked and saved everything, and my mom spent everything. And that's, it's two extremes of the ways not to really generate wealth, right? So I didn't know anything. I thought get a safe job, and nursing's very safe. I like people. I like human biology. It's fascinating. But I graduated, worked as a nurse, didn't know anything about real estate. Moved to Charleston, South Carolina about 6 years ago, and still didn't know anything about real estate. Just nursing. That's all. That's what I knew. And I came across Rich Dad Poor Dad, and everyone talks about, oh, it's so simple. And, I don't know, it's not 100% accurate. Look, when I read it, I didn't know the words asset or liability. These were totally new to me. And so it just blew my mind. And from there, I read a ton, listened to a lot of podcasts. And I listened to Frank Rolfe, who was on the Bigger Pockets podcast talking to Brandon Turner. And, I was looking for my own path, and I was like, oh, he laid out all these cool things about it. And I said, yeah, I like that. It's a little bit weird. It's a little bit different, but the fundamentals are there, and I really like it. So I just researched a little bit more, talked to some people, and just kind of dove in. And, that first park was on mobilehomeparkstore.com because Frank said, hey, go check out mobilehomeparkstore.com. And I said, okay, sure. And so, there was one, it was like an hour 15 from where I live. And I reached out. I was super, super nervous because I didn't know anything. And, the guy had listed it, and it was per Frank Rolfe's calculations, per the lot rent model, it should have been substantially less. But anyway, I called the guy, got a voicemail, left a text. Hey, I'm not sure if I have the right person, but my name's Tim. If you're still selling, give me a call. And he calls me up, and he is a retired pharmacist. And so I'm just like, oh, that's so cool. I'm a nurse. And so just naturally, I'm kind of how can I build rapport with someone? That's just how I am. I like finding common grounds. And, he was telling me, oh, I'm selling this. My daughter's in Chicago with her husband. They're both physicians. I want to spend time with them and with my new granddaughter. And so I'm looking to sell. So I went up, met him and his brother at the park. And, they showed me around, and then we went to lunch, and then I said, well, you want this price? I can only offer this. And again, I'm going off lot rent only. It was only 10 to 36 occupied. So it was substantially lower. And, I just said, look, I'm sorry. This is way lower than you wanted, but here's what I could offer. And right away he said, no, I can't do that. He said, I can't go anything less than this. And I said, okay, well, if I get you that, will you sell it to me for that? And he said, yes. And then I said, will you finance it to me? And he said, I'll finance maybe a little bit of it. So what was it? I'll finance 20% is what he said. And so I said, okay. And I didn't even have any contracts or anything with me. I had no idea. I was like flying by the seat of my pants. So I had a contract for the price I wanted, but I didn't have any extras, like where I could write in a price. And so I was just like, okay. I left there, and he was like old and southern, and like, if what I say, like, I'm sticking by my word, and I totally respect that. I love that. And, again, he could have said, "Oh, to hell with this guy," but no, he said he would do it. And yeah, it was a lot. It was difficult. It was, trying to find financing on a 10 to 36 occupied mobile home park in, small town South Carolina was not easy, but we did. We got it, and he did finance that. He stuck with his word. We closed it, and I didn't know where I was going to go, but I knew that I had to bring in homes. I knew I had, like, okay, this is it. I have to bring homes. I don't know how exactly. And
Tim, can
yeah,
I pause real quick just because I have so many questions? First off,
please, please,
I'm like
please.
so impressed that like you have this sophisticated real estate investing experience. Like, how did you know to ask for seller financing? Like, how did you get educated on mobile home park investing in the first place? I know you initially said podcasts, right? But like, how did you know to ask for that seller second?
So when I came here to Charleston, and when I was getting into real estate, I someone said, "Oh, go to meetups, go to a local meetup." And so I was part of, well, I still am, part of a local meetup group with like guys who have been in the business for a while, not mobile home parks, but they've been in the, real estate investing space for a while. And so I would go there every Tuesday because I worked Friday, Saturday, Sunday at nursing, right? So I'd go every Tuesday morning and I'd listen to them, and they talk about all these crazy ways to do things. And it's kind of like what I was around all the time. People talk to owner finance, like, so it was being around that
Yeah.
made me initially just like, oh, okay, how about will you finance the whole thing? Like, it was almost second nature to ask for it.
Wow, that is so awesome. And I love that. That's how I got started too. I started going to CFRI. It's like a local RIA group here in Orlando, and learning about, investing in notes and,
Yeah.
subject twos and lease options. And they had like a Saturday course every Saturday morning that I would go to. And like the courses were like $200, and it was like a whole Saturday thing. And that's how I started flipping houses when I first got in. And it's just like, wow, what I learned from that, like at going to those Saturday courses and for yourself Tuesdays, was like worth more than I got in 4 years of college in
Oh,
terms of like financial education and financial freedom. It was crazy.
yeah. And you know what they say, get in the right rooms, get around the right people. And like,
That's right.
that is so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many people doing things in different ways than the norm. And I guess like just being around that, it's like osmosis. I just sucked it up. So
Yeah. And then is that how you learn to go direct to owners to try to find deals? Is that where you got that initiative from? Because that in and of itself, right? Like that took some initiative. And, if you did, if you didn't have a lot of experience, how did you know to just go straight to the owner instead of going through a broker?
so the other thing about the group is that like some of them were realtors, but most of them were like anti-broker, right? So they're like, oh, anytime a broker gets involved, like there's unnecessary friction. So
Sure.
like that was just what they preferred. But to be honest, like it was dumb luck, I'm sure, because the seller had listed it himself. He didn't use a broker to list that park.
Hmm.
So it was just me being like, okay, I see the phone number on the website. How about I call that?
That is awesome. And then how did you get educated on mobile home park investing in the first place? Did you go to like a boot camp, or was it just like the podcasts or read a
Just the
book?
podcast, and then, like deep diving on the internet. Not to disparage Frank, because I know most people that I know who are into the MHP space have gone to Frank's boot camp. I just haven't, and I never did. I should one these days and see.
I've gone a
But
couple
yeah,
times. I recommended it. You always learn something, and Frank is super entertaining. But yeah, that's amazing, man. Congratulations. And then the park that was 10 of 36 occupied, how is it doing now? And why was it, distressed like that? Only 10 of 36 occupied. Was it just poor management, or what was going on there?
so I was telling this story the other day, and when the seller and his brother were showing me around, I asked this question, which now seems rude, but it wasn't a rude. It was just me being curious. I was like, "Why is it only 10 to 36 occupied?" And he said, "Well, it's all paid off, and I don't have to put any work into it. Like I'm getting, whatever, 2 grand, 3 grand, or whatever a month from it." And he's like, "I don't need to." And I said, "Oh, okay."
Best
So
reason ever.
exactly. He's like, "Well, I'm a retired pharmacist and like I don't need to." So, yeah, I mean
That's awesome.
it's just out of necessity, he didn't need to really build it up. But so today, let's see, I have 25 at 36 homes on it. But what's interesting about that park is there's all these individually deeded lots, right? So I bought
Mm,
36 deeded lots. So there's 25 homes in there, and like all the other parcels of land that I don't really want to put a home on, because as we all know, it's not easy. But even more so, it's not that it's not easy, it's that the economics don't work as well in that small town, South Carolina, as I'd like them to bring in new homes. So I just have owner finance all the land. So I think right now there's 32 of 36 that are, either like lease with the option of purchase for like the parcels of land, and then the 25 are, rental slash lot rent only. So
gotcha.
it's
Creative, man.
creative. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. What do you think, Tim, is the toughest hurdle to overcome in mobile home park investing?
Lowering your expectations of people sometimes, maybe, like depending on the park, right? So maybe a park looks a little rough and not like some place that I would live, but people are paying really well. I got a park up in North Carolina where it's like you go through, and it's not like rough, like, oh man, I'm afraid to be here. It's more like, oh, they spray painted their address on the side of their home. Okay, well, like, you know, uh, no, I wouldn't live there, but is it going to make me money? It is, and it's like my best park. I'm not even going to lie about that. I love that park, and I love the people in them. So it's like not everyone is going to be, the same. Like, but what I do like to do, it doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or if you got nothing. I mean, everyone deserves to be treated like a person.
Mhm.
Everyone deserves respect. So yeah, I think sometimes adjusting your expectations. I could say, "Hey, how dare you, do that? We need to, have like different standards." And then that might work for some parks, but it doesn't work for every park. So kind of
Catering.
be a
Yeah,
little bit
catering,
fluid.
customizing each
Yeah.
park based on the residents that are staying there. I like that. I don't think any other operator has mentioned that, but that is so important. Like we have a similar park in southern Georgia, in Tifton, that is one of our best parks. Uh, but yeah, there's just if we were like very strict with our rules there, we would upset a lot of people and probably have a lot more turnover than we do now. Where in other parks, it's like mandated. The tenants are on each other about rule violations and someone putting, a washing machine in their front yard. So it's just you got to cater it. That's a very good
Yeah.
feedback. That's good feedback there. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by
Um,
the way, Tim, do you own most of your stuff around where you live in Charleston, like North Carolina, South Carolina? Is that
yeah. North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia is where I own currently. So
okay?
you got Tifton, I got two in Albany, which
Oh,
aren't, it's
very
not,
close.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Very close. Awesome. Tim, how has your mobile home park investing strategy changed over how long has it been? 4 years in the business? Has it
Yeah.
changed at all?
Yeah, totally. So, for the longest time, I've been like, "Oh, how dare they ask for that price?" Right? "Oh, how dare they? That's crazy. They're never going to get it." And we all know the last couple of years they did get it. But instead of trying to, oh, that's BS. Instead of griping to myself about it, I'm more like, okay, how can I get that price? So then, it's probably got to be creative,
Yeah,
but fortunately for me, I grew up in creative real estate. So like that's interesting to me. Um, like creative deal structure, how can we make this a win-win? So it's like, okay, if I give you your price, are you going to give me my terms? Or like, how much money do you need down? Can you come in as like an equity position and carry some of the down payment? I get a bank loan, you get that, and then you carry a little bit, and then I am raising a little bit less from my investors, and like it's just a fun math problem, and it's
it is.
like,
There's so many ways to get creative with it, which I love that. And are you buying like what's the average size of the communities you're buying? 30
um,
to 40 lots or so?
so like I say 40 plus, but like, I
Hmm.
mean, it depends. If it's in a portfolio, then like that changes it for me. So like I bought my Georgia portfolio at like 78 lots, a North Carolina portfolio 88, but like in that North Carolina portfolio, there's one that's 14. In the Georgia portfolio, there's one that's 14 as well. So it's like,
Yeah. If you
what
cluster and get enough around each other, it kind of makes sense to have a bolt-on smaller one, right?
yeah, and because it the thing with smaller, and you know this better than I do, I'm sure, is that it's just harder to run, harder to
Yeah.
get stuff done when it's small, like money makes the world go round. Like despite whatever, whoever says whatever, like it's money. If I have money coming in, I can pay someone to do something effectively. Whereas
Mhm.
if money's not coming in, then it's like, okay, how can we get this done with this limited amount of resources?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And it's a little bit tougher. Exactly.
yeah.
No, that makes sense. Tim, what mistakes have you made in mobile home park investing that, our listeners can and myself can learn from?
Oh my gosh. I feel like this needs another podcast, right? Okay. So the first mistake I ever made is on that first park. I left meeting with the seller, and I went home and I met up with a friend I had at the time, and he was someone who dressed super well, and I like was well versed, and I was like, man, this guy's got to have a lot of money. Like I have no idea what to do next, but he's going to help me. And so I took it to him, and he turns out had no money, and turns out like, he was shady, and the
Mm,
shady in the way that like my ex-girlfriend was like, I don't know about partnering with him, but I was so hungry for that stupid first deal. And so I partnered with him. And next thing I know, we're closed and he's taking money from the like operating account. And he's just
mm,
it was a cluster of bad times in early 2020 trying to get him out, because he was like, yeah, it was a lot of like, oh, well, he's on the operating agreement now. He owns a third of this company. And so it was a lot of nastiness early 2020. So listen to your gut, right? If someone seems crappy, or if they're doing crappy things to some people, they're probably going to do the crappy things to you too. Let's see, other mistakes in mobile home parks. Things don't happen as quickly or as cheaply as I would think that they would. And I know everyone says that. And I just had to experience it enough times to lower my expectations, Like I can be really angry about this taking longer and being more expensive, but like all that's doing is me being angry. That doesn't change things for the better. That doesn't do anything for me. So adjusting my own expectations. Yeah, I'd say those are the big ones, There's always a story to tell. There's always a way to do things.
How about due
Like I was
diligence? I'm surprised. That's how we got started, was going to the boot camp, and they give you the 30-day due diligence handbook. How did you embark on, due diligence on your acquisitions? Did you have some sort of, format that you were following, or utility infrastructure inspections? How did you handle all that kind of stuff?
I didn't really. Like I didn't. My
Wow,
first
good
the
for
DD
you.
on my first, and I felt it, Like so within early 2020, going through all the drama with the other partner, there was also like a big sewer issue. And it
Mm,
wasn't, looking back, it wasn't that big, but it was big to me because I didn't know what the hell was going on. So I remember, I had just met Ryan Groney. I'm sure you know Groney. because he lives here in Charleston too. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do? And he's like, basically, calm down, just call a plumber. Like it's gonna be okay. And so like, it would have been smart to snake the lines. I did not. It would have been smart to do a lot more thorough due diligence. I didn't. In the grand scheme of things, I got out unscathed relatively, but there's I took action without I mean, I did research in terms of things that I should do, but I didn't implement everything in terms of due diligence. So, yeah,
And
hard and
now,
fast that first time.
no, and I mean, a lot of our no, a lot of our due diligence has been, not from the 30-day due diligence handbook. It's been from doing deals, right? Being in the field and learning from our mistakes, because we've made some as well. And, utility infrastructure, I think of everything, deserves a lot of attention, right? Before you buy something. So, how does that process look now on your future acquisitions for due diligence? Do you have a better process to kind of catch sewer issues and things like that you didn't in your first mobile home park?
Yeah, I've got a checklist now, and like an amalgamation of like stealing stuff from this person, this person, this person. Just I ask around a lot. That's
Yeah,
what I am good at, is asking for help.
that's great.
And so people have sent, different things, and so I take what I like, and then I've made it into a checklist, and it has helped tremendously. Yes, like snake your lines, check the utility infrastructure. I don't have anything good for septic, to be honest. I have, check a few septics, but I don't know. What do you do for septics?
We've pumped them. We did one and we pumped them, which was not the cheapest thing in the world, but there was like six tanks for like 52 lots or something like that. So
Mm,
we
mm.
pumped them and just, inspected the tank to make sure, like, if it was concrete, or, what the infrastructure of it was. But yeah, I mean, without digging down in the lines and seeing, it's really tough, right? But like, we had a
Yeah.
company go out there and kind of, it was the company that has, cleaned them out every year and kind of write up a little report, on kind of what they were seeing and the absorption and the leach field, to make sure. But it wasn't 100%. It wasn't like they were like, oh, this is 100% going to be fine, and they're giving like a stamp of approval, right? It was really vague. And yeah, it's worked to this point, and the tank, didn't have any obvious signs of leaking. But ever since that one, I think it was a story that Frank Rolfe told, where he's like, yeah, someone he knows was getting charged $10,000 a day by the EPA because they had
Oh,
a septic tank that was leaking. And I was like, wow, that's scary. So we prefer, and probably 90% of our parks are on public utilities, city water, city sewer. But yeah, I think that's what people need to understand, is there's additional risk with private. It's not the end of the world. Deals still work with them. We own parks with septic and with well, but there's just additional, there's a little bit extra risk there, right?
oh yeah, and if you ever find someone who can give you 100% stamp that, like, oh, this is 100, you're good. You're not gonna have to worry about it.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to text me their info.
Red
Uh,
flag.
but yeah, I mean, I stay away from lagoons. I stay away from wastewater treatment plants. Not saying that people don't do them successfully. I'm sure they do. It's just not my thing. But I am of the attitude of, when there's an issue, I will figure it out. There's black swan things all the time. I have an idea of things, but I don't need 100% certainty, because I recognize nothing in life is 100% certain. So I do the best I can. I gather the information I can. And then if something comes up, then I figure it out.
I love that. I'm wondering if there's any aspect of that you took from your nursing career and brought into MHP investing.
Okay, look, with nursing, there's, depending on where you're working, there's a lot of times where you have to make do with what you have. So like nurses and occupational therapists are the best at like figuring things out with like the best I have, And it's probably a surprise to a lot of people who aren't in the healthcare field, but that's just, the reality of it. It's a
Yeah.
business, and a lot of things cost a lot of money, and not every hospital has the money to pay for things. Or that's above my head in terms of healthcare business side. I never did that. I was all bedside. But it's like, okay, well, I can't afford this. So what can I do? And a lot of times it's, hey, go talk to that nurse over there. Like they have been doing this for 30 years. They can get an IV in the craziest of places. So maybe ask them for help. So that's, a lot of
Asking for
no,
help.
yeah,
That
yeah.
what you said. You're great
Who's
at. That's
who's
awesome.
who's better than me? Who's smarter than me? That's what I'm
Yeah,
looking for.
that's so important. And before we hit record, we were talking about triage, right? And it's like, hey, if no one's dying here, how can we prioritize this appropriately to, address the most important things first? So that's really cool, man. Hey, if you were going to invest passively, as an LP in another operator's deal, what would be the most important things that you would look out for or look at or want to know before investing into that deal?
Um, so I am big on being open and honest. And like I guess after that first deal, like my bullshit detector is like I want to see some solid projections, not anything too lavish because sure I've done deals where I give great returns to people, but like that's not what I want to see as an LP. Like I want someone who's aware of, you manage the downside, let the upside take care of itself sort of thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, I want someone who like, okay, it has a plan and has, something where they're open and honest about this is how we're doing things. I haven't invested, but I've heard of, different people doing different things. And it's just like why did they do it that way? Because it seems like they're hiding something. And I'm not saying they necessarily are hiding things, but it's just like, why, man? Just like simplify things. Simplify it. Tell me, straight up like how it's going to be, how it's going to look like. Everyone who's investing knows that, things happen. There's
Yeah, it's
ups,
not an
there's
annuity.
downs.
It's not an
No,
annuity, right?
no.
This isn't guaranteed cash flow. This is an investment. There's risk, and
Yeah.
things change, right? I think a previous guest, I think it was Ryan Smith with Elevation. He said your pro forma is just basically stating, how how wrong is it, right? What is the percentage wrong your pro forma is, right? Because nothing's
Yeah.
going to go
Yeah.
exactly as planned. So that's good. Tim, what would the perfect mobile home park look like in your eyes, and why?
I mean, that is such a hard question because it depends. It's so the perfect mobile home park is one where I have built out the team and they make it so they're running what they know they have to. So currently, my perfect mobile home park is up in North Carolina, and it's perfect because of how great the on-site manager is.
Mm,
So when when we were doing due diligence, I like to meet people, right? So I like to get a feel for people. So I was meeting all the tenants, and I came across this one person, and she had lived there since like the 90s. And I didn't, I couldn't place my finger on it, but I liked her. And so I said, would you be interested in being the on-site manager? And she said, well, I've never done anything like that. I'm like, yeah, it's okay. I'll teach you how to do it. If you're willing, we can see. It's there's nothing written in stone, but let's see. She is so good. She's like, I mean, there's been stuff with the park, there's been a lot of capex, there's been a lot of things that we've had to do and fix, but she is on top of it. She so 100% collections every month, like no
mm,
problem, right? Because she's on top of it. She has filed eviction. She's gone to court for me and won in court. She calls a plumber. She calls the septic people. She is on top of it. And like, that's my dream park. It's not that, oh, there's no problems. It's, man, I am blessed because I found this person who is like so on top of it. And so now I'm reevaluating all my other parks and being like, I need this kind of manager. And in the Georgia parks, I have a really good on-site manager too. So she takes care of the four park portfolio. She is very on top of it. And she has a little bit of a law background. So she's
mm,
like, hey, when I first met her, she's like, well, I can, I'm not a lawyer, but have done this in school. I can help with this. And like, so she'll say, she'll bring up something and I'll be like, what do you think? And she'll like, here, per the law, the code is this. And I'm like, that's perfect. Because I don't want to do that. I'm not good at stuff like that. And it's not my forte. So, she takes the initiative. So that's the perfect park. How about that? There's no perfect park. There's just really,
Perfect
really good
on-site
people.
managers. Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
on-site management's so important. No, I say this all the time. The very first park I bought, Quail Run, I inherited from the previous owners. Her name's Diana Rice, and she was like our best. She was my on-site manager, and now she works with me in corporate. She's been with me 7 years now.
Love it.
And I mean, with she was so good, like what you're saying, helping out with CapEx and everything, that it was like, oh, this is easy. Mobile home park investing, this is great. And, obviously I learned very quickly in the next couple of acquisitions that, you know, not every on-site manager is like Diana, and it can get dicey with a bad on-site manager. But yeah, a good on-site manager is so valuable. And that's why I took this from Mike Conlon, actually, where we started paying, Frank kind of teaches that, hey, $10 per occupied lot plus free lot rent to your on-site managers. But we threw that out, and Mike Conlon, taught us with Affordable Communities Group. He said, hey, pay your on-site managers well, because they'll stay around longer, you have less turnover, and they're worth their weight in gold, literally. So that's great feedback. One thing I wanted to ask you, Tim, you do a lot of value add parks, right? Like you're doing financing, and you're doing a lot of creative structures to acquire the deals, but then you're doing value add. So what would you say is like the toughest value add components, and what type of value add are you, executing upon in your business plans?
Well, of course, bringing homes in, that's been my biggest and most profitable way of doing things, value adding in mobile home parks. But you also have like fixing roads up. Like if I'm gonna jack up your rent $75 in a year because I just took this over and like they were charging criminally low. Like I've gotta morally for me, I want to make things better. So like the only way that makes sense for me is to do something. And so like fix up the roads, make it a little bit, make the place nicer to live in. Um, yeah, but really bringing homes in, and I'm all about like how can I do this with the smallest capital outlay possible. So um, with at the beginning of this year, I started with 3 parks. I got 9 parks right now, another 1 under contract, um, that's likely to close. So, like, I've been expanding out my team, right? So, like, I do in-house management, and I've got, you know, now I've got VAs to, like, work with collections and stuff like that. Again, I this is my year, I guess, of stopping being the bottleneck in my business. But, like, in the ownership of the parks, one of my partners now, I'm like, "Look, I've brought in homes before, but that is like you do that now because you are, I'm always thinking like, who's this person and what are they probably best at? And then let's make them be that. And so he's detail oriented. He's a realtor. He can go out and get his mobile home license, and then we can either 21st or Triad or whoever we can you know figure out how to do that with the lowest amount of capital outlay. But yeah, so getting him in there, getting good people in there, and value adding. Um, so those are,
That's
are
huge.
are two
Yeah.
big things. Yeah.
No, that's huge. Yeah. And a lot of operators don't buy those type of deals. They want stabilized stuff. And with interest rates doing what they're doing right now, it's hard to get deals to pencil out. If you're buying something at a 7 cap and you're getting a 7.5% interest rate, that's not going to get the best returns. So that takes us right into the next question. What do you think the future of mobile home park investing looks like? Given the direction of the economy with higher rates. There was a big article said something about the Fed is expected to keep rates higher for longer. Uh, Possible recession. How do you think MHPs fit into all that?
So I'm super bullish on mobile home parks. I do think if you are banking on interest rates going lower, you might get bit. And so like, yeah, if it happens, love it. That's sweet. But man, ooh, I don't I'm not banking on it, you know. I'm underwriting it as if today's rates have to work. And like to get to some people's prices, I got to get creative, right? So if
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't negative cash flow, and I don't like that's not my thing. If it has to be at least paying all its bills, paying all its investors, whatever pref I said, and then like have a way to do a little bit better. So it's like, okay, you want that price, and you want your seven cap, and my rate's 8 or whatever. Well, then you gotta, carry back a portion of that as an equity investor at like a 2. And then all of a sudden my blended rate's like 6.5 or 6 or whatever, you know. It's a lot of creating spreads and being like, well, I don't think that the rates are gonna go down. And I can't wait to listen to this in like 2 years when interest rates are 3% again. And I'm like, ha ha ha, look, I thought I was so right then. But if it works at 8, if it works at 9, if it works at 10% interest rate right now, then I'm good, right? I'm managing the downside, and the upside will take care of itself. If I'm underwriting at, oh man, I can like 8% I can do, but like it only really cash flows when rates are at 5%. Like I like sleeping better than that. That stresses me out too much.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. And I think with your business model, right, which is similar to ours, the value add approach, it's like, hey, on in place income, we're buying it at a 6 cap, right? But at the end of year 2, after we've infilled 24 homes, now it's a 9 plus cap, right?
Yeah.
So like that's kind of how we're looking at some deals and making them pencil out right now, given the higher rates. But Tim, let me ask you this: what do you think the biggest threat to mobile home park investing is?
The biggest threat, uh, I part of me wants to say like uh, 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 governments like trying to get rid of, or like being, oh, we don't like this, but like they can say that all they want, but logistically it doesn't make sense. And like, I mean, sure, there are governments that are want to get rid of them, but I don't want to invest around there. Other than that, I mean, people who aren't charging enough for lot rent, and then other people come in and say, "Oh, like this isn't a great area. I can get rid of this park and build an apartment here." Yeah. So I'm in Charleston, and it's a hot market. And I was talking to a guy, and his mom and dad started a park. His dad has passed. His mom's 85. She's like the matriarch of the family. I love this story. So she is still, at the park. She's still at she goes by the office. She manages it. They're like her family. It's like the whole park. She knows all of them. So, they're looking to sell because mom's getting older. Sure. They had someone, they want this audacious price for it. And they had someone come by and said, "We'll give you that price." And their plan was to buy it and turn it into an apartment. And
Mhm.
mom and the family didn't want that. And I love that. I totally respect that. I but like I don't know, if you're in a hot market, like if that's your highest and best use for the land, I couldn't blame anyone in that scenario if, neither the buyers nor the sellers, if they wanted to turn it into apartments. So it's, I don't know. Um, yeah, maybe, people selling and turn it into apartments. Highest and best use.
It's more and more common, and I wrote an article about this. So it's like why the number of mobile home parks in the U.S. are disappearing, and it's like the only commercial asset class where there's more redeveloped or tore down compared to new ones being developed because of that regulation and NIMBY, right? Where it's
Yeah.
hard to get a new development approved because of the surrounding neighbors of the property. No one wants to live next to a trailer park, right? That stigma kind of scares people away. So I agree. I think that is a risk. But I'm such a big fan of manufactured housing, and I do think it is one of the solutions to the affordable housing crisis. And we just need to get more people on board with that, and a lot of these municipalities are pushing hard against that. So I agree with you, Tim. Tim, this has been an awesome episode, dude. How can our listeners get a hold of you if they'd like to do so?
Yeah. So, I mean, Facebook, Tim Woodbridge, Instagram, Tim.Woodbridge. I'm not hard to get a hold of. I'm not like a giant where it's like, oh, this is my corporation and you have to talk to one person and they'll get a hold of me. No, just reach out. I love helping people. So I want to find, let's see, I want to find newbies who are interested in the space. Because so my problem right now, I'm talking to a ton of people and creating interesting deals at work. Like creative deal structure is my thing. My problem is that I'm the bottleneck. I don't have enough time. There's only one of me. So I want to take deals down with people who are hungry for mobile home parks, and I can kind of show them how to do it, and we can both win. I also want to find investors who are interested in the space and who are like, oh, I want to throw a little bit of money in. We give great returns. Before you hit record, I was talking, I look at least 2x equity multiple in 5 years. I'm like, refi at 5, hold for 10 plus. That's where I'm right now. They're really, the cash flow is great. I love mobile home parks because like I say that, but like, yeah, we're getting good returns for people. But also if like I was talking to someone recently, they want to be an LP. They're like, but I also want to figure out like how you do this. I want to know like what that's like. I'm like, dude, how about instead of you being an LP, be a JV, and then like you can come behind the curtain. It's not crazy. It's just it seems crazy because you don't know it. But like I would love to show everyone what I'm doing. There's no magic sauce. It's just putting the repetitions in and being there
Elbow
day in
grease.
and day out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
lot of
dude.
elbow grease, but it's not rocket science. I say that all the time. But I will say, right, this is, there's no promise of good returns, right? We can't do
No,
that.
no,
We're
no,
just,
no.
this is not an annuity. There's stuff goes wrong. It can go wrong. But yeah, no, that's awesome that you're willing to like reach out and help out and educate people. So that's really cool. Tim, what's one last piece of important advice you would give an interested passive investor before we sign off?
Just network with a lot of people, talk to a lot of people, you know. So my dad always told me, he said, ask other people. The worst they can say is no. So like if you're interested, just get around people doing it. There's nothing crazy. Yeah, there is elbow grease a lot of times, depending on what you're doing and what you want to do. But yeah, ask around and have no like fear. And hey, I like if y'all want to say, hey, Tim, I'm looking at this deal. What are your thoughts? I'll give you, my thoughts. That's fine. Or I'm sure a million other people in the mobile home park space would say the same. Like I loved going to Seco because I met a whole ton of people that I've been talking to for years. And like everyone is there to help. Everyone is there to like, hey man, we all know this game. We all know the business. Like we all are there to help each other. And it's a very cool niche. It's a very cool space where everyone is like 100% providing the help. Yeah. If you're looking to throw some money at something, ask someone else. Hey, do you know this operator? What have they done?
Yeah.
What's their past been like? Or like, do you know them as a person? Yeah,
It's a tight knit community. It's not like other asset classes where there's a big group of operators. It's actually tight knit. So that was what I thought was cool about Seco is it's like, hey, there's a core bunch of people that are doing deals and they all know each other and network. So that's really awesome. And I agree, everyone's really helpful. So well, Tim, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
dude, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, that's it for today, folks. Thank you all so much for tuning in.
Hey, are you getting value out of this show? If so, would you mind please going over to iTunes and leaving the show a quick 5-star review? I have a goal of hitting over 100 5-star reviews by the end of 2021, and it would mean the absolute world to me if you could help contribute to that. Thanks ahead of time for making my day with your 5-star review of the show.